Engaging 15 minutes before and after posting, is that helpful? How do I write a hook? How do I come up with hooks? Trending audio or original talking audio? Which one should you post? Hello, what's up, and welcome to today's episode of Social Media Moneymakers, part of the Stan family of podcasts. My name is Brock Johnson, and today I will be interviewing myself on your behalf. And as confusing as that may or may not sound, essentially I've asked you to ask me questions on my Instagram stories and in my Instagram direct messages. And so in today's episode, we're going to do a deep dive into Instagram Reels specifically, where I will be answering pretty much every question that I have received regarding Instagram Reels. We're going to talk about the length of Reels. We're going to talk about best practices. We're going to talk about hooks. We're going to talk about all of the nitty gritty in terms of how do you get more views and engagement on your Instagram Reels. So if you're someone who's trying to grow on Instagram, whether you're a business owner or a content creator, this is an episode that I would highly recommend you download, that you save, and that you listen to probably 2 or 3 times. Also, if you ever have any questions that you want answered on the show, please feel free to send me an audio message. I've been collecting direct messages that have audio questions in them. And so if you ever have a question, doesn't have to be necessarily related to Reels, but just anything relating to making money or growing on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, send me an audio message over on Instagram and I'll make sure that that gets included or at least considered in a future episode. I really appreciate all of the feedback and interaction that I've been receiving recently related to Social Media Moneymakers. If you ever have a question that you want answered in the future, or if you just ever have feedback, comments, concerns, or suggestions for the podcast in general, feel free to shoot me a direct message on Instagram or even leave a comment on any of my posts, and I'll make sure that that gets considered and incorporated into future episodes. All right, question number 1. Let's get into it. This first question was actually asked by multiple people in multiple different ways. One came from Stu Fitness. Another one came from Your Unique Balance. And essentially the question is in regards to the length of the reel. Your Unique Balance said, short reels are better than long reels? And Stu Fitness said, what's better now, long reels or the 5-second ones? I'm lost. Let me start by saying that there is no universal best length for your reel, and anyone who tells you so is ultimately stretching or bending the truth a little bit. There is definitely going to be an ideal length that your audience prefers, but even if your ideal audience prefers, let's say, a 17-second reel, that doesn't mean that you should never post a 5-second reel and you should never post a 60-second reel. Generally speaking, what we found is that reels that are between 15 and 30 seconds tend to be in that sweet spot. It tends to be the amount of time where you can hold someone's attention, you can deliver some value or share something funny or share some sort of story, and then people can consume it and move on. Continuing on that breath, if you go more than 30 seconds, that's totally fine. Just make sure that you are engaging enough, really. Make sure that your viewers are still watching after 30 seconds. It doesn't matter how many seconds you're recording, it matters how many seconds they're watching. So if you're posting a 60-second or a 90-second long reel and your viewers aren't watching, well, then that's not going to help you out very much. So I would recommend sticking, generally speaking, in that 15 to 30-second range and then experimenting with reels that are longer and shorter. The challenge with reels that are shorter than 15 seconds is that unless it's like some popular clip from a movie or a TV show or a meme or like a popular soundbite, it's hard to deliver a lot of value or humor or captivate someone or truly entertain them in just a handful of seconds. So ideally shoot for the 15 to 30 second range, but by no means is that like a rule or something that you need to stick to. That's just a general recommendation of what we generally find to be most effective. I will say Instagram has recently begun testing longer reels, and even there's a rumor going around that sometime soon Instagram is going to release 3-minute reels, which will effectively double the length of time that we're able to upload reels. This was my number one prediction for 2024. If any of you saw my Instagram predictions for 2024, my number one prediction was that Reels would be longer and that we would be rewarded for posting longer Reels. So as Instagram continues to test this, as Instagram rolls out 3-minute Reels, and as Instagram continues to show this little pop-up, which a lot of people may have seen, you may or may not have seen it, it's a little pop-up that says, your Reel might not be performing as well because it's less than 30 seconds. Consider posting a Reel that's longer than 30 seconds. That is, let's call it an ad. I would even call it a little bit of propaganda on Instagram's end. There are no studies that we have found that show that Reels that are longer than 30 seconds perform better. But what that does tell us is that Instagram themselves wants us to post longer reels. Of course, though, that comes with the big asterisk that people are actually watching your longer reels. So the best of the best is if you're posting a longer reel that's 30 seconds or longer or a minute or longer and people are watching. But if you can't get people to watch that long, again, to go all the way back to my initial statement, stick in the 15 to 30 second range. Question number 2 comes from VIP.affiliate, and she asks, engaging 15 minutes before and after posting, is that helpful? Yes, it is helpful. Generally speaking, the more social you are, the better your account will do, the better your posts will do. But I don't think it's 100% necessary. So if you don't have a 30-minute window to engage before and after posting, then you should still post. I don't think that you should disregard posting because you aren't able to stay super active and engaged. I would rather have you post and ghost, which means post and then not be there at all, not respond to any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, than not post at all. Of course, the best of the best is being 100% engaged, 100% of the time, responding to every comment that comes in, every direct message, being as active as possible. And generally speaking, the more engaged, the more social you can be, the better. But it's not a rule that you absolutely have to spend 15 minutes before and after posting, responding to comments and interacting with people. Also, for anyone who is confused during that answer, you're hearing me talk about like engaging and being social. Really what this refers to is before and after posting, or even just generally on Instagram, going to other people's pages and other people's posts and other people's comment sections and interacting. Not siphoning, not stealing engagement or telling people, hey, go click on my account, but just genuinely leaving thoughtful comments, asking questions, and networking within your community. It essentially gives you a voice at the table, and it puts you kind of top of mind for people when you are making a new post. Next question comes from Snow.Functional, but honestly, it's probably the number one question that I get in regards to Reels, and it's basically that your views are decreasing, and that is absolutely true. In fact, in 2023, Reels views on average decreased by 76%, which is mind-blowing. That means you're getting over 3/4 less views, which is absolutely crazy. Said another way, you're basically getting a quarter of the views that you used to. That's across Instagram as an average. And so that's true for very many people, which means that for a lot of us, you're not necessarily doing anything wrong. What I would say anyone who is having this thought is doing wrong is focusing too much on views and getting too caught up in the results of their content rather than focusing on engaging with their community, serving their community, or just creating more content or creating better content. So my advice for you, if your Reels views are going down, number one, take solace that you're not alone. You know, it's okay. You're not the only person. It's not necessarily because of something you're doing wrong. Number two, stop focusing on the fact that your views have gone down. And number three, continue listening to this episode because I'm going to share a lot more tips on how to bring those views back up. I will say one of the really common reasons that views have gone down is that Instagram has changed their tracking. Specifically, they have tried to decrease the tracking of spam views. So whenever we post a reel, we get a certain percentage of viewers who are spam. And Instagram is now trying to implement systems where they do not track those spam views. So that might be part of the reason that your views are down. I think it's also important to remember the bigger picture. Remember that Instagram crashed just a few weeks ago, and some people never got their Instagram back. Some people decided, that's it, I quit Instagram. And a lot of people are just less engaged with Instagram in 2024 than they were in 2023. That's one of the reasons that it's important to be constantly gaining followers, because even if you're not necessarily losing followers, you are constantly losing your followers' attention. Even if you're the most engaging, captivating person ever, a certain percentage of your followers will just be not online, not paying attention, not checking their Instagram, their phone will be broken, their account will be hacked or disabled or whatever. So even if you're not actively losing followers, you are actively losing your followers' attention at all times. And that's why it's important to constantly be replenishing those people with new followers. But of course, like I said, keep listening. We're going to get more into best tips, best practices for Reels and how to increase your views later on in the episode. Next question is a great one, and this one comes from Ops by Trine or Trini. I'm sorry if I'm saying anyone's name wrong today, but she said, basically, how do I write a hook? How do I come up with hooks? I come up with ideas, but they always seem to be too long. First and foremost, let me share my best practices for hooks and general ideas to keep in mind with your hooks. Generally speaking, you want your hook to be between 5 and 8 words long. Any less than 5 words, and it's hard to articulate an idea in just a 4-word sentence. Anything more than 8, and it starts to lose engagement or lose that kind of punch that can be packed into a 5 to 8 word sentence. That's the first thing to keep in mind. Second thing to keep in mind is that you generally want your hooks to be around a 5th grade level comprehension. Now, do you know what a 5th grade level comprehension is? I don't. What I do instead is I just go to ChatGPT, I type in the idea of the hook that I have, and then I say, is this a 5th grade level comprehension? Or I will say, write this hook so that it is at a 5th grade reading level or a 5th grade comprehension level. And that should then allow the AI, ChatGPT, to come up with kind of a better version of the hook, or at least statistically speaking, a more engaging version of the hook. But to specifically answer the question of how do you come up with hooks, or how do I come up with hooks, I will oftentimes take the overall post and think, what is the idea that I want communicated in this post? Or what's the point of the post? Like if I was to summarize this post in one sentence, what's the big takeaway? What do I want people to be left with? And then that will inform the hook. That will give me an idea of how I want to hook someone in. I also often think about what is the pain point that is being solved in this video. So maybe it's a video about 7 tips for hashtags. I could use the hook. Here's 7 tips for hashtags. But that would just be all right. That's kind of just like a neutral hook. Instead, I could come up with a positive version of the hook, which might be 7 ways to boost your views using hashtags. So I'm kind of focusing on the positive outcome. Or I could do a negative hook. A negative hook for that same video might be, stop doing your hashtags wrong. Here are 7 tips to improve your hashtags. So I'm focusing first and foremost on that negative. Speaking of negative, neutral, and positive, that is the order that seems to be most engaging for hooks. Negative hooks seem to be the most engaging. Neutral hooks seem to be the second most engaging, and positive hooks seem to be the third most engaging within that category. And my final tip for coming up with better hooks is just rely on artificial intelligence. Feed in some prompts, some previous hooks that you have found effective or things like that, and it will help you come up with at least starter ideas for your hooks. Mona.Constante said, I have 3 views and I've been posting every day for a month. What am I doing wrong? This is going to sound really, really mean, and I don't mean it to be mean. I hope this isn't offensive, but I do want to be honest. And what you're doing wrong is expecting views or expecting results or expecting a difference to be made in 30 days. I think that there's a lot of coaches, a lot of people in my industry who tell you these success stories about people going viral overnight and blowing up their following. And I got 40,000 followers in 30 days. I got 100,000 followers in 30 days. And it gives people this false expectation that growth is easy or that growth is realistically obtainable in a relatively short amount of time, when that's just not true. It is most likely going to take multiple months, if not, and this sucks to hear, if not years or multiple years, to build a substantial audience that is consistently engaging and giving you views. So my recommendation, if you've been doing this for 30 days and you're not seeing results, is keep going. Don't stop. Don't let the views get to your head. Don't let the lack of engagement or the lack of growth get to you. Just keep focusing on creating content, creating more content, and creating better content. And over time, you will improve. You will get better. The views, the growth, the engagement, that will all take care of itself. Just keep your head down, keep grinding, keep working, and you will see results. Yulia.svk said, do you actually need to have a caption under your reel, specifically for SEO purposes, or no real difference? Let me kind of answer this question in parts because I think that we can really parse this out. First and foremost, do you need a caption under your reel? No, I sometimes will experiment posting no caption below my reel and just allow my reel to do the talking. But what I can say is that generally speaking, you might as well add a caption, even if it's just repeating your call to action or something like that. Generally speaking, I would say it's better to have a caption than to not have a caption. Specifically to answer your question about captions and SEO, SEO stands for search engine optimization. And for those of you who don't know, essentially every single part of your Instagram is being scanned by the Instagram computer to figure out what you're all about, to figure out what your posts are about, what your niche is, et cetera, et cetera. It reads your bio, it reads your captions, it listens to your posts, all of that. And so if you can include some keywords, some phrases, some terms and topics in your caption that relate to your content in general, or to that post, or to your page, then it does help the algorithm just even more figure out who you are, what you're about, and all that good stuff. But it's not necessary. And the one thing that I would say is absolutely not necessary that I've seen people doing recently is what's called keyword stuffing. It's where essentially you type your caption, you tell your story, whatever, you type out that caption that you normally would. And then at the bottom, you put a bunch of random keywords like marketer, entrepreneur, social media marketer, Instagram marketer. Those things are not necessary. That's redundant. It's not going to help you all that much. You're not going to see a difference from it. And it just kind of looks inauthentic to your followers. So generally speaking, if you can organically include keywords and phrases in your captions, go for it. But don't force yourself to stuff keywords and phrases into your caption in order to improve your SEO if it doesn't make sense. The next question comes from the same creator, which is, how do you not feel awkward in front of the camera? And this is not the sexy answer. I wish there was some magic formula I could give you. If you just hop on your leg 3 times and then spin around and then say duck walk, then you're going to not feel awkward on camera. But in reality, there is no magic solution to getting over camera shyness or feeling more comfortable on camera. It's just practice. And so for someone like myself, I've been consistently trying to grow on Instagram, and I've been an Instagram coach for 7 years now. I've been posting on social media for, I think, close to a decade, maybe even over a decade, posting YouTube videos. I've been podcasting for, I think, 6 years now. So I say all of that to just say, I've had a lot of practice. I'm now at the point where I can watch an hour-long video of myself, and this might sound egotistical to say, but I can watch an hour-long video of myself or listen to any of my podcasts, and I don't cringe. I don't feel awkward or embarrassed or feel like it's weird to listen to my voice or see myself on camera. And that's because I have so much repetition, so much practice at it. I guess you could say I'm kind of numb to my own voice. I can watch myself on camera as if I'm someone else, and I can analyze it and critique it, make adjustments and get feedback, and just improve in general my camera charisma, my on-camera presence, and those sorts of things without taking it so personally and feeling so attacked or so awkward or so unnatural on camera. What I can tell you is that being on camera is unnatural. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Shaq or Ryan Seacrest and you're on camera every single day, or if you've never been on camera in your life. It's not natural for any of us, but it can feel more natural with practice. It can get easier with practice. In terms of a actual tip for how to practice or where to practice, find a low pressure environment where you can practice, right? Think about a great sports team. They don't practice in front of 100,000 fans. They practice in a closed private gym where there's no fans and there's no one there except for their coaches and their teammates. So apply that to your social media space. Maybe you're going to create a private account, like a private Instagram or a private TikTok, where you're just going to record and create videos for no one to see. They're just for you to practice. Maybe you're going to start a new Instagram account and just not tell anyone. Maybe you're going to post on an old account. Maybe you're going to post on Snapchat. Maybe you're going to post on your Instagram stories. I don't know. But finding these kind of low pressure environments where you can create and record and be on camera, but you also know that not very many people are going to see this, that can be a helpful tool in practicing your camera presence and getting over the feelings of awkwardness. And then finally, just put yourself out there. Start posting, and I promise it won't be as bad as you think. You will judge yourself very hard. That's definitely going to happen. You're going to overanalyze and be critical of yourself, and I wish I could tell you not to, but I know no matter what I say, you're still going to be critical of yourself. But I promise once you do start posting, you're going to learn that the world is far less critical of you than you are of yourself. Everyone else is much more forgiving. They don't even notice that little blemish or imperfection that you think everyone is staring at. And if they do happen to notice, they're not going to say anything. They're probably going to think it's really cool that you're posting despite that imperfection, or that you're posting and you're brave enough and willing enough to put yourself out there. So I know this was a long-winded answer on how to not feel awkward in front of the camera. Ultimately, it boils down to practice, and then ultimately just pulling the trigger and putting yourself out there. This is kind of a tongue twister. The Green Bird Brigade asked, thoughts on how long to wait between posts for better reach? This is a great question because it is true that if you post things within the same hour or even, 2 hours apart, those two posts are going to be very heavily competing with one another for reach and distribution within your followers or within your followers' feeds. So generally speaking, I recommend waiting at least, let's say 4 or 5 hours between back-to-back posts. Ideally, if you can wait a little bit longer, that would be better. I wouldn't recommend posting 2 things in the same hour or even 2 things within an hour or 2. Generally, 4 or 5 hours is a good rule to stick to if you're going to be posting multiple times in one day. I will also say if you have a post in the morning that is not performing very well and you have another post scheduled for later in the day, maybe you want to move up that later in the day post and post it earlier, because from my point of view, if post number 1 is already doing not so well, you might as well bury it and move on to post number 2 and have post number 2 have more time to get into the algorithm and more time to be distributed. You could also argue that if post number 1 is not doing so well, then maybe you actually want to delay post number 2 so that post number 1 ends up doing even better and it just has more time to reach more people. It's really up to your discretion there, but my general recommendation is if you're posting more than once a day, put at least 3 or 4, ideally 4 or 5 hours between each post. Speaking of multiple posts in one day, the next question comes from The Kentor, which is, how many times a day should I post for maximum growth? As many times as you can. It is statistically accurate to say that the more you post, the more you grow. Instagram's CEO himself recently confirmed that when you post more, on average, growth rates do increase. He also made it a point of noting that when you first begin posting more, you will see an initial slight decrease in followers. So if you're someone who's trying to maximize your growth on Instagram, I would recommend posting as much as you can. That means, yes, even 3 or 4 or even 5 times per day if possible. Now, that all makes sense mathematically and it sounds good on paper, and it might be possible for 5 or 10% of listeners, but for 90 to 95% of listeners, you are feeling very anxious and very frustrated and very annoyed right now that you cannot post that much. I understand. So even though I say the more you post, the more you grow, let me explain a few more things and go a little bit more in depth. First and foremost, you can't just post to post. You can't just post crap. When I say the more you post, the more you grow, I assume, and I probably shouldn't assume, but I assume that you understand that those posts are of a certain quality, that those posts are related to your niche and that they apply or that they appeal to your ideal audience. That's the baseline. We need to make sure our posts are of a certain level of quality, they're related to our niche, they make sense for our ideal audience. And as long as you check off those boxes, it's true that the more you post, the more you grow. But instead of focusing on some random number that I can throw out there, like 3 posts a day, I want you to focus on what you can sustain. Because sustainability is going to lead to more growth long term than inconsistency, which is caused by short bursts of hyperactivity followed by long periods of inactivity, which is, I think, what a lot of people end up doing. A lot of people hear, the more you post, the more you grow. And they post 3 times on Monday and 3 times on Tuesday and 3 times on Wednesday, and then they run out of posts by Thursday, and then they miss a few days, and then a few days becomes a few weeks, and then a few weeks becomes a few months. So instead of just blindly focusing on some random number, I want you to first look at your own past output. How much have you been posting over the last few weeks or months? And that will give you a good baseline of what you can sustain. Maybe it's 1 a week, maybe it's 4 a week, maybe it's 1 a month. But whatever that is, just write down that number. Figure out what number you can sustain, and then challenge yourself to do a little bit more. Because while I am not a fan of hustle culture, I am not a fan of putting your health, your physical health, your mental health, your family aside in order to prioritize posting on Instagram, I am a fan of pushing yourself, and I am a fan of stretching yourself further than you think you might be able to and pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, because I believe that both on Instagram and in life, growth comes when we push ourselves to do more than what we're comfortable with, to push outside of our comfort zones and to just put in a little bit extra effort, work a little bit smarter, work a little bit harder, just a little bit. Not saying to sacrifice your boundaries or anything like that, But if you can sustain 3 a week without too much difficulty, what if you challenged yourself to do 4 a week or 5 a week? Because again, it is true that the more you post, the more you grow. Next question comes from It's That Gala, who asked, is it better for smaller accounts to use audio with less than 10,000 uses, or is that expired news? That, my friend, is expired news. It does not matter what audio you use. It doesn't matter if it's trending. It doesn't matter if it has 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 previous uses. I don't care if you're the first person to ever use the audio. I want people to stop stressing out over their audios and is it trending and is it popular and is it going to blow up? That's old news. That's the old Instagram. That's the Instagram of 2 years ago. Instead, when you're looking for audios, I just want you to think, can I come up with an idea for this? Can I come up with a reel for this? If you find an audio that you think is funny or it's popular or you think it's relatable or you think it's catchy or something, use it. If you find an audio and you're like, oh, I have such a good idea for this, do it. I don't want you to neglect a post idea because the audio has too many or not enough uses. Stop stressing out over trending audios and just press post. Next question comes from Sarah Sunshine Meredith, who said, what time of day is best to post your reel? There is no best time to post reels. There are lots of studies that have been done, and pretty much every Instagram scheduling tool loves to come out with a report based on their data of when is the universal best time to post. But truly, there is no universal best time to post because we all have different audiences, and all of our audiences are in different parts of the world and have different time constraints and availabilities. And even two people with very similar audiences, they might still like to engage at different times of the day. I also don't think that it's best to just look at your Instagram insights. Some people will say, based off my Instagram insights, the majority of my audience is active early in the morning. So they post early in the morning. But just because that's when the majority of your audience is active or most of your followers are online doesn't mean that that's necessarily the best time for you to post. Let me give you an example. If you say that, hey, the majority of my followers, let's say you have 100 followers, all 100 of them are online at 7 a.m. You might think, okay, well then I need to post at 7 a.m. But what if everyone else is also posting at 7 a.m.? What if everyone else who your followers follow is posting at 7 a.m.? That's a lot more competition. Whereas compared to, let's say, 4 in the afternoon. Maybe at 4 in the afternoon, only 80 out of your 100 followers are online. And you might think, well, that's 20% less, so I shouldn't post at that time. But who knows? Maybe even though there's 80 people, which is, again, 80% of your following online at that time, maybe no one else who they follow posts at that time. So you have 100% of those people's attention. So again, there is no universal best time. What I would recommend in terms of finding your best time is just post at different times for sequential weeks. Maybe spend a week posting at 7 a.m. Then the next week you're going to post at 4 in the afternoon. Then the next week you're going to post at lunchtime. Then the next week you're going to post in the evenings. And just see if there's one time that generally does better. And if it does, generally stick to that time. You don't have to post at the exact minute, but just try to stick to that time. For most people, though, it doesn't really make a difference. For most people, if you're posting between sunup and sundown, between, let's say, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., you're going to get a pretty consistent level of engagement and level of views. You can't really cheat the system by posting at some magical hour. Next question comes from Aaron Core Coaching. Again, I hope I said your name right. I'm sure I'm going to butcher some names today, so I apologize. But she asked, trending audio or original talking audio where you're doing like an educational reel, maybe you're talking directly to the camera, which one should you post? I would say both. I don't think that you should only post one or the other because that's neglecting one kind of content. It can get boring, and it just ultimately allows you to diversify your content if you're posting both. So you do a mix of the trending, the pre-made, the kind of like soundbite audio. Maybe it's a lip sync or something from a song or something that's like a popular meme at the time. Do a mix of those and the educational reels, because the educational reels are great for building your credibility, building your trustworthiness, and speaking directly to camera so that people can really get to know the real you. But I will also say very candidly, educational reels where you're talking directly to camera are not very likely to go viral or reach a ton of non-followers. So that's why I would also recommend mixing in some of the popular reels, the trending reels, the audios that are pre-existing and made by someone else and have thousands of other people already using them, because those are more likely going to reach non-followers and potentially go viral. So do a mix. A healthy Instagram strategy includes every single kind of post, every single kind of reel. Does that mean you need to post every single kind of reel? You need to post every single kind of post and use every single feature? No, but I would say that if you do want to grow on Instagram, it would behoove you to post the educational reels, the trending reels, and I know this is an episode all about reels, but I'll also throw in there, you should also be posting photos and carousels as well. All right, and last but not least, our final question is from Roadmap to Growth. And honestly, there were so many people who asked some variation of this question, and I promised you we would talk about this today. So how do you boost views? Roadmap to Growth specifically said, why is my reach stinking these days, LOL? Well, there's lots of different reasons. There's lots of different factors. Some of them are beyond your control, and we've kind of talked about those ones already. The reasons beyond your control are things like people using Instagram less, people engaging less, people just seeing your content less, spam views no longer being counted, more people posting, which just means more competition for views, which means less views to go around. Those are things you can't control. But let's talk about the things that you can control to increase your views. If your views are low on Instagram, if they've been going down, here are the basics that you need to know, as well as the advanced strategies in order to bring your views back up. Number one, first and foremost, every single reel needs a hook. Now, in one of our previous episodes, I think it was episode 8 with Emily Cooper, she shared how she comes up with her hooks and how there's actually 4 hooks in every video. And I love that point by her. The 4 hooks that she described were the video itself, like what the actual visual is. The second hook is the text on screen. So whatever, like the title or the headline or the hook that you're putting in the text. The third hook is whatever's going on in the audio, whether it's like a voiceover and you're saying the words of the hook, or if there's a sound effect, or if there's like a song in the background, those can all be hooks. And then the fourth hook in every reel is the first sentence of the caption. So 4 hooks in every reel, and every reel needs a hook. Every reel needs something at the beginning to grab people and hook them in, for lack of a better word, and just grab their attention to make sure that they keep watching. The average person is seeing tens of thousands of videos every single day. So in order to make yours stand out, you need to grab attention within the first 3 seconds. And of course, we've talked a decent amount about hooks already in today's episode. So I'm going to refer you to myself from 10 minutes ago to get your best tips for hooks. All right, number 2, the second thing that every reel needs as a non-negotiable, like the bare minimum, is good lighting. I see a lot of reels that are filmed in dimly lit hallways and bedrooms that are dark and dimly lit. And while you might be trying to be moody, it really just makes it harder to see. So you don't need to invest in like professional lighting equipment, but just be mindful of the lighting in your reels. Make sure that you are well lit. Make sure it's easy for people to see you. And just make sure that generally speaking, you're paying attention to the lighting, both in the foreground, which is you, and in the background. Along those same lines, the third non-negotiable mandatory tip for increasing your views is use good audio. When we think about reels, we think so heavily about the video, when audio is half of video. Audio is half of reel. It's half of what people are consuming. Half of it is the visual that they're consuming with their eyes, and half is the audio that they're consuming with their ears. So again, you don't need to invest in a professional high-quality microphone, but even just like a $5, $10 mic off of Amazon can be a real difference maker in your reels. Pay attention to your audio, especially if you're in an environment that's loud or that's echoey or that has like background noise. All of those things can detract from views and engagement. So pay attention to your audio. Now, with all of that said about audio, it's also true that the majority of people consuming content on Instagram are doing so on mute. According to one study, it's actually over 80% of people watching watching Reels on Instagram are watching them on mute. So what does that mean? It means you need closed captioning. You need subtitles on your video. I don't care if you are speaking directly to camera or if you are using some sort of trending audio, you need to include some sort of closed captioning, something that is legible so that people are able to understand what you're saying or what you're talking about in your reel. Tip number 5 that I consider a non-negotiable mandatory for your Reels is a call to action. Basically, something that's going to tell your audience what you want them to do next. The best place for a call to action is in the Reel itself because that's where the highest amount of people are going to see it. The second best place for your call to action is at the beginning of your caption, and the worst place for your call to action, which is also where most people are putting their calls to action, is tucked away, buried down at the bottom of your caption. The reality is a very small percentage of your viewers are going to read your entire caption, which means that only a small percentage of your viewers are even going to know how you want them to act. So best case scenario, include your call to action in the Reel itself, preferably by you saying it directly to the camera or putting it directly on the screen so that you can remind people that you want them to act. Now let's talk a little bit more about calls to action for a quick second. Besides just where do you put them, what should you say in your call to action? General recommendation for you is to only tell people to act in one way. Don't say like and save. Don't say save and follow for more. Don't say save and share and like and comment and do all these other things. Just tell them one thing that you want them to do, and that one thing should be based on what you already think they are most likely to do. For example, if you post a super educational, valuable reel with maybe a tutorial or a long explanation in it, the most likely action that your followers are going to take is save it, right? Because there's so much value and education in that reel, they're going to want to refer to it in the future. So remind them to do so by reminding them to save the reel. Basically, once I'm done scripting and recording and outlining my reel, I'll basically just reread it or rewatch it and think, what is the most likely action that people are going to take based off this reel? Again, if it's super educational, they're probably going to save it. If it's maybe funny or lighthearted, they're probably just going to like it. If it's inspiring or it's controversial, maybe they're more likely to share it. If I'm asking a question or posing like a prompt that I want people to answer, well then of course it's probably going to get a lot of comments. So based off that, I just ask people to do what they're already most likely to do. And then my 6th and final non-negotiable baseline tip for your Instagram Reels is that they all need to be related to your niche. And I personally define niche as the who and the what. The who is your ideal demographic, your target follower, and the what is the topic you're going to be posting about. Every single reel that you share should be related to your niche. All right, now let's get into maybe some more advanced tips or just higher level things that you can think about if your Reels views are down that you could consider incorporating or paying more attention to in order to bring your Reels views up. The first one is what's called color psychology, which is basically the belief that there are emotional and subconscious responses triggered by different colors. For example, if I want you to do something, to go, to take action, to feel motivated, that is a text or a button that is more likely to be green. That's why oftentimes when you press the checkout button or the buy now button, it's green. Of course, if I want you to stop doing something or avoid doing something, or I really need to grab your attention to alert you to something, I'm going to make that text red. So consider breaking away from your brand colors and incorporating intentional colors into your Reels based off what you're talking about. Along those same lines, if I'm sharing a tip that I want people to take action on, something that I want them to learn or to do, I'll put it in green or yellow. If I'm trying to stop people and grab their attention and tell them what to avoid, I'll put that in red. If I'm trying to get people to trust me, I will wear blue, or I will make the text blue because blue has been shown to promote trust. The second quote-unquote advanced strategy that you need to consider is just making sure that you have proper layout. And I wish I had some sort of like fun, fancy title for this tip, but really it's just considering the placement of where text should be and how it should be aligned. Let me give you a few examples. Titles or labels should go above the people in the Reel's heads. It should go in the upper third of the video if you're telling the audience who the people are or if you're titling the video. Subtitles go in the lower third. They generally go below the mouth of the person speaking, and they're usually in a smaller font or a smaller text size. Along those same lines, generally speaking, if you have multiple lines of text, more than 2 lines, let's say, it should be aligned to the left. Closed captions are usually aligned to the center, but if you are providing like a paragraph of text or 3 or 4 sentences of text on the screen, if you align it to the center, then it makes the viewer's eyes have to kind of go back and forth to find the start of each line, when in reality, it's best if it's aligned to the left. It's easier to read, easier to consume, and thus you're more likely to get views and engagement by doing so. Tip number 3 is better editing. And now there's a lot that goes into that. In fact, as someone who really enjoys editing, and I've been editing for a very long time, I have even hired an editor now to edit all of my content for me because I believe that good editing makes that big of a difference with Instagram Reels. There's just so much to consider. There's sound effects, transitions, filters, video effects, all of these different things that can make your Reels more dynamic and more engaging and more captivating. And so while you may not be able to afford, or you might not be in a position where you want to hire an editor, at the bottom line, you should consider improving your editing, maybe watch some tutorials, maybe side by side play one of your Reels and then someone who you look up to in the industry and see like what things are they doing, what sound effects have they included, what transitions or video effects have they put in their Reels to make them more engaging. Tip number 4 is what's called the 3-second rule. And depending on who you ask, they might call it the 2 or the 4 or the 5-second rule. But it's this general rule that comes from TV and movies where essentially no single clip should last more than 3 seconds. Every 3 seconds, there should be some sort of change, whether it's a new angle, a new clip, a new transition, a new effect. There should be something happening every 3 seconds. Luckily, 3 seconds is about how long it takes to say a single sentence. So basically, when I'm recording my Reels and editing them, every single sentence is a new clip, a new edit, or a transition. And I know this might sound crazy, but the next time you're watching a movie or a TV show, I want you to pay attention to how long each scene is. How long is it between each cut, between each new camera angle? And you might be shocked to find that even in a 2-hour-long movie, they are cutting every 2 to 3 seconds. Shout out to movie editors, by the way. Those are the real heroes because you can imagine how long it takes to edit a 2-hour-long movie where there is a cut or a change every 2 to 3 seconds. My 5th tip for getting more views, it could be called an advanced tip for your Reels, is also having to do with the number 3, but rather than the 3-second rule, this is called the rule of thirds. It's a rule within cinematography and photography where essentially if you were to draw 2 horizontal lines on your screen, which would break your screen, your phone, your camera, whatever, into 3 segments. And then you were to draw 2 vertical lines. So now you kind of have a tic-tac-toe grid on top of your camera. The most interesting points in the video are where those lines intersect. The intersections are where the eye automatically goes to, and those are the most visually interesting areas within your reel. These grid lines also act as guidelines for where you should place things in your reel. Generally speaking, your eyes should be on the upper horizontal line. That's kind of also known as the eye line. So place your eyes on that line. And speaking of your eyes, you need to make sure that you're making eye contact with the camera. It can be very awkward if you are looking at yourself in the reflection on the screen or you're looking somewhere else because you're reading a script. Try your best to make eye contact with the camera at all times. And try your best to be aware of the rule of thirds. Try to place your eyes on that upper line. Try to place anything else in your video on those intersection points because those are going to be the most engaging points or pieces in your video. Tip number 6 is to include your hands in the video whenever you can. If you can show your hands, it has been shown to increase engagement and promote trust. When people can see your hands, I think it's just like something that we've evolved to at this point. When we can't see your hands, we feel like we don't trust you. We don't know literally what's up your sleeve. But when we can see your hands and you talk with your hands, it makes you more trustworthy. It helps us pay attention, and it just generally makes you as the speaker more engaging. And then my final tip to help you get more views on your Reels is to create share-worthy content. Content that gets shares on average gets 400 additional views per share. So you can imagine what a difference just 4 or 5 shares would make on your bottom line and on the number of views you're getting. It allows you to kind of jump over the algorithm and say, I don't care about you, algorithm. I don't need you to distribute my content. My followers are distributing my content for me through sharing. Encouraging your audience to share and thus getting more shares is essential for increasing your views. Now, if you want to get more shares, you should create content in one of the 4 following categories, because we found that the 4 following categories are the types of reels that get the most shares. Number 1, by far, is newsworthy or breaking news kind of content. Now, this might not be applicable to every single niche, but one way that you could apply this to your niche is if you were to take something that's popular in the news or media or pop culture and relate it to your niche. The second kind of content that is oftentimes share-worthy is what can be called controversial content, or maybe just unpopular opinions, or even political content. And I'm not telling you that you need to post about all your political beliefs, but if you do believe something that is related to your niche that is maybe unpopular or can be somewhat seen as controversial, that is something that I would recommend sharing because it is highly share worthy. I guess I could say that is something I would recommend posting because it is highly share worthy. Whenever you can ruffle the feathers a little bit and take a side when it is applicable and appropriate, people will oftentimes be very likely to share that content. The third kind of content that is highly share-worthy is content that evokes very strong emotions, more than just a ha-ha or a quick laugh emoji, but the things that are super relatable, super funny, or on the other end of the spectrum, super sad, super vulnerable, super emotional. Those things are highly share-worthy. And then the fourth category of reel that is highly share-worthy, very shareable, is content that is a call to arms. It's kind of a we need your help style of post. I can think of the woman you might have seen. I posted a reel about this a few weeks back. She was on hospice and dying of cancer, and she had this song that she was trying to get to go viral and to trend because any download would go to her son, or I guess I should say all of the proceeds from the downloads would go to her son. So it's kind of like a call to arms, a we need your help, let's all band together type of situation, and that, of course, is very highly share-worthy. Thank you so much for listening today. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, make sure you download this episode and make sure that you're following the podcast or subscribed to the podcast in general. That way, when new episodes come out, they're automatically in your inbox and ready for you to listen. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.